America's debt isn't just big, it's historic. We're talking about a $37+ trillion tab, growing faster than the economy itself. The question isn't if this debt triggers a crisis, it's when, and the clock is ticking. Walk with me, and I'll show you how this spiral could spark the next collapse. As of today, America's national debt has blown past $37 trillion. Let that sink in. That's over $109,000 for every single person in the country. Before you even wake up in the morning, you're already on the hook for a six-figure share of the bill. This isn't just a big number, it's a flashing red warning light. Our debt is now bigger than the entire U.S. economy, which means every dollar we produce is already matched or outweighed by a dollar we owe. That's not stability. That's a financial death spiral. Here's the playbook Washington keeps running. Spend way more than it takes in, then borrow the difference. Kick the can down the road and hope nobody notices. But each year, the can gets heavier and the road gets shorter. One economist compared America's fiscal health to a 350-pound, two-pack-a-day smoker in the ICU. You don't need to be a doctor to see how this ends. Even former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin admitted decades ago that America's debt was a ticking time bomb. He called it a threshold issue.
This is a threshold issue. It's going to be difficult politically, but this is what we have to do.
But here we are, 30 years later, with debt now at $37 trillion, and Washington still hasn't done a thing about it. America's debt spiral doesn't just live on spreadsheets. It plays out in the bond market, the place where Washington borrows its money. The U.S. issues trillions in treasuries, counting on investors to buy them up. But here's the danger. Too much supply and too little confidence means higher borrowing costs. And when rates spike, the whole economy feels the shock. This is where the so-called bond vigilantes come in. Investors who punish reckless governments by selling off bonds and forcing interest rates higher. It happened in the 1980s, it happened to the UK in 2022, and it can happen here. Legendary investor Ray Dalio has been blunt about it. After studying centuries of debt bubbles, he warns that America's debt spiral has created a greater than 50% chance of a full-blown crisis within just 3 to 5 years. If the world's largest hedge fund manager says America's running out of runway, that's not fear-mongering, that's a flashing siren. Rising rates don't just hurt Wall Street. They choke mortgages, car loans, credit cards, and every single dollar you borrow. One reason America hasn't collapsed already is because the Federal Reserve can always fire up the printing press. Technically, the U.S. can never run out of money. But here's the problem. Printing more dollars doesn't erase debt. It just pushes the pain onto everyday Americans. Every dollar printed makes the one in your pocket worth less. That's inflation. Your grocery bill grows, your rent climbs, your savings shrink. What looks like a quick fix in Washington is really a slow bleed for households across the country. And it's not just today's workers who are paying the price. The damage is generational. Economics author Kyla Scanlon warned what this means for young people.
Scanlon says young people risk not ever having access to Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
Not only are they not going to have access to those services, but they're also going to have to pay for those who did before them. And so it's kind of this double-edged issue.
If younger Americans are left paying for benefits they'll never receive, then inflation isn't just an economic issue. It's a betrayal of the future. When does the debt spiral finally snap? That's the trillion-dollar question. Some experts argue America can keep limping along for decades. Others warn the clock is running out much faster. The truth is, nobody knows the exact breaking point. Markets can tolerate reckless borrowing until suddenly they can't. Confidence disappears overnight, interest rates spike, and what looked like a slow-motion problem becomes a full-blown financial crisis. That's why investors are watching closely. And few voices carry as much weight as Ray Dalio, the billionaire founder of Bridgewater Associates. After studying debt crises across centuries and continents, he believes America isn't immune. His warning is blunt.
I think that there's more than a 50% chance that in 3 years, give or take a year or two, that we will experience a trauma if we don't deal with this well.
If Dalio's right, America doesn't have decades to fix this problem. It has just a handful of years. And once the spiral starts, the correction won't be gentle. It will be brutal, and ordinary Americans will be the ones caught in the crash. America's debt spiral isn't just an economic story, it's a national security threat. For decades, the U.S. military has been the backbone of global power. But here's the shocking reality. Washington now spends more money on interest payments than on defense itself. That means every dollar going to creditors is a dollar not spent on soldiers, ships, or technology. Former military leaders have been sounding the alarm. One of the strongest warnings came from Admiral Michael Mullen, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He didn't point to Russia or China as the greatest danger to America's security. He pointed to our own debt.
The most significant threat was our national debt, which was a bit of a surprise.
Think about that. America's top general saying the debt is a bigger threat than foreign adversaries. If debt makes it impossible to fund defense, respond to crises, or maintain global influence, then collapse isn't just about Wall Street or Washington. It's about America's ability to even protect itself. If America's debt crisis feels unstoppable, there's a reason. Washington is addicted to dysfunction. Both parties love to point fingers, but when it comes to making the hard choices, neither side delivers. Tax cuts, new spending, and more borrowing. It's the same cycle every time, and it never ends. The result is gridlock. Politicians stall, delay, and kick the can further down the road, gambling that the fallout won't happen on their watch. But every delay makes the spiral worse, and every compromise piles on even more debt. Budget experts have run the numbers, and their verdict is brutal. Fiscal policy is not sustainable. Under current law, the debt load becomes so massive that the economy essentially blows up. At that point, fixed income markets, the bond markets that fund America's borrowing, will collapse. Some models predict this could happen within the next 20 years if nothing changes. But here's the catch. Markets don't wait for timelines. Confidence can evaporate overnight, and when it does, the reckoning arrives much faster than Washington expects. Political dysfunction isn't just messy, it's lethal. And in the end, it won't be politicians who pay the price. It'll be you. America's debt spiral isn't some distant problem waiting decades to show up. It's unfolding right now, in real time. $37 trillion and counting, with interest payments already bigger than the defense budget. Inflation eating away at savings, bond markets on edge, and a political system too paralyzed to stop it. This is how great powers stumble. Not from a single catastrophic event, but from years of ignoring the warning signs until the cracks in the foundation turn into collapse. We've seen this movie before, and empires that thought they were untouchable, right before they fell. The scariest part? There's no painless way out. Either America makes brutal fiscal choices now, or the markets will make them for us later. And when that happens, the crash will hit ordinary Americans the hardest. So the question isn't whether a crisis is coming, it's whether you'll be ready when it does.